GDP to bail out Citigroup, and we don't own the bank now. The shareholders get to keep the bank. Vikram Pandit and his executives get to keep their jobs. I'd like to know what the American people got for that. If that's fiscal responsibility, and that's what Geithner's going to bring to the Treasury, I think that, maybe Obama ought to rethink his nominee.
Well, what do you think, Susan? At this point, look, we all want the best result here, without question. But at some point, we've got to see progress, and we're not seeing it. And is it possible, and I'm asking you all as economists and some of the best economic thinkers in the country, is it just possible that we don't have a clue about how to deal with this crisis, and we need to all step back and say, it's time for new thinking, fresh thinking, and to step away from the cycle that we seem to have entrapped ourselves in, which is just throwing literally trillions of dollars at a problem that is, at this point, pretty much undefined.
Well, there clearly is an ad hoc element of this, and that's, we've got to step back. And it's interesting because, of course, Tim Geithner is continuity. He is continuity, so how does he step back? But there are other people on the team, and we have to get to the basics here. Remember, it all started in housing. We still don't have a solution to deteriorating housing.
Let me ask you this, too. I mean, there isn't even a discussion here of the moral issues involved. You all alluded to one aspect of this, and that is, as Peter Morisi pointed out, we don't own Citibank. We don't own Citigroup. The investors of a defunct organization, or one that was about to go defunct, received a 60% boost in their equity holdings thanks to the government. There's no change in management, no change in leadership. And 1 million people lost their homes to foreclosure. Another 1 million face the prospect of doing so, and the government is not responding to that crisis. Why isn't there some political discussion, some economic discussion of the morality of this?
Well,
David?
because, Lou, for years, Lou, we have driven morality out of these discussions, and we've only talked about them in practical terms. We're up to $8 trillion now. Now, the total amount of mortgages in this country is around $10 or $11 trillion. So we've gone way over the size of the problem that we're seeking to address. And what's happening is as if you had a war being conducted and led by the lieutenants and the captains. It's all tactical. There is no fundamental strategy.
That's right.
And there also seems to be an absolute unwillingness to accept the fact that these artificially inflated assets have to deflate. We can't allow them to not deflate without ruining the rest of our economy and bringing on perhaps much worse conditions than what we're afraid of.
Professor
So
Morisi?
we agree that we should not allow this to deflate. I mean, we agree that that cannot happen. And leaving aside morality for a moment, although I agree with you, we've got practicality here. We have to keep...
Where the heck is the practicality, Professor?
The practicality is that the mortgage market continues to implode. We have another deceleration of housing prices. We see no deceleration, only acceleration of housing price declines. There is no saving the banks if housing prices, which back their mortgages, keep on deteriorating.
Professor Morisi, you got the last word.
Well, what about the real part of the economy, the manufacturing sector that's been taking it on the chin from the overvalued dollar against the Chinese yuan? We could get an enormous fiscal stimulus to get the economy going again by just fixing that problem. Put a tax on dollar-yuan conversions equal to the subsidy the Chinese government is putting in place by selling all those yuans for dollars and stashing them at the Federal Reserve.
By the way,
if we did that, that would solve a lot of problems.
There's just one thing I want to leave everybody with. If we had taken for $206,000, the average price of a house at the time last year, with 1 million houses, just under 1 million houses foreclosed, it would have cost the Treasury, the Federal Reserve, if they wanted to pay off all of those loans that put people into foreclosure that weren't being paid, it would have only cost the government $200 billion to have paid off every one of those loans and avoided those foreclosures and the impact.
The mortgage-backed securities in the United States only come to $2 trillion. Yeah. We could have paid off all the mortgage-backed securities.
The American people are absolutely... I mean, what's being done here is
lost
disgusting.
Opportunity, and we
in my
continue to
opinion,
lose
folks, it's criminal. But we're going to have that discussion another time.
Take
Professor
care.
Walker, thank you very much. Professor Morisi, David K. Johnston, thank you very much. Anybody, all right? How is it that everybody wants General Motors and Ford in particular to come back with a plan for how they're going to spend $25 billion, but the Federal Reserve and the Treasury throw $8 trillion at Wall Street and the banking industry, and they don't even want to get a greeting card from them.
No, you're absolutely right.
I mean, what is that?
It's the epitome of hypocrisy. But, going back to your question about where's the Republicans, where are the people, we were told, remember, think back to the original, the credit market is frozen. If we don't do something by this Monday, by this weekend, oh my gosh, we're all going to die. Everything's going to freeze up. So they passed this extensive bailout, and then we're told...
Wait. See, we got to add one thing.
Yeah.
Even with that fear-mongering, they knew that they couldn't get it through unless they added $150 billion in pork.
No, absolutely. But the point was, if we don't do it now, the markets, nobody will get credit forever. Then they tell us after it passes, it's going to take 6 months to take effect. And we're still in the same position. Banks have money now. They won't lend money out. What is going on here?
Yeah. Lou, how did we get in a situation where we give the banks the money and we allow them to hoard the money when we know what we need to do is get the money out into the hands of the public so they can have student loans, car loans,
part of the answer, and we'll explore that right after this commercial break, but I believe part of the answer is Hank Paulson found himself duty-bound to take care of his buddies on Wall Street first. We'll be back with our panel in just a moment. And a reminder to vote in our poll tonight. The question is, should companies receiving tax... Well, we're back with Errol Lewis, Steve Malzberg, and Dan Patrick. Let me turn first, if I can, to Dan Patrick. This auto industry bailout, we got to have it. There's just no question, whatever the reason is. National security, you name it, 3 million people lose their jobs. We got to do something. I don't get why Congress is so uptight about this idea after basically signing on for $8 trillion. Do you, Dan?
Well, I do get it from this standpoint, Lou, is until we see a plan that says they're going to change their business model, all we're doing is just bridging the gap until they eventually go bankrupt. What I would rather see, and I'm not in favor of any of these bailouts, but what I would rather see is if we're going to bail out someone, let's bail out the middle class. That you had a story earlier in this show that's being hammered. Let's give each family a voucher for $5,000. It can only be used if they buy a new automobile or a new truck. That will start moving inventory. Your idea of 13 months ago that we need to buy up these foreclosure homes. Let's rework those loans so there are no more foreclosures. We need some practical thinking down on the Main Street level that helps the average American family. That's what we need to help get this economy rolling. Once the economy gets rolling, everything takes care of itself. But I'm tired of giving money to Wall Street, tired of seeing Congress have no transparency where this money's going. Let's put it in the pockets of the people. We got here, Lou, because once upon a time the saying was we're spending our children's money and then our grandchildren's money. This government is now spending our great-grandchildren's money, and the factor of inflation and debt is going to destroy this country.
Getting back to the bailout of the auto industry, I know what my callers resent the most and what I resent is that we're going to pay, and Congress, Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid never talk. They say the CEOs have to restructure, the company has to restructure, the shareholders have to suffer, but they never mention the United Auto Workers. We're still paying health care for retired workers and their families for the rest of their lives. I mean, if that doesn't change, I don't want to give them a penny.
You think the Democrats are going to take on the union?
Go ahead.
Well, they have no choice.
Look, I don't think so.
Here's the Gordian knot, right? I mean, it's the pension and the health care benefits that in other countries are paid for by the government. That adds $1,500, relatively speaking, to the price of an American car.
How much health care we could have bought for $8 trillion?
All of it. All of it for everybody.
I mean, we could buy a car for every man, woman, and child in this country for what we're spending here. We're being played for idiots, and we're still not answering the moral question. And that is, what are we doing and why? And why have we let 1 million homes be foreclosed upon in this country, another 1 million of our fellow citizens facing foreclosure, and have a discussion about Citibank and their officers remain in their jobs, the same at AIG and every one of these institutions, and their shareholders are bailed out while the taxpayer is on the hook. I mean, for crying out loud, how much dumber can it get?
We didn't even get a stake with Citibank. We got nothing.
I mean, it can get dumber. The only light at the end of this tunnel I see is if a significant amount of this bailout money ends up in infrastructure, something that's of value that people can really use, we won't have lost everything.
That's going to be the last word.
Lou,
thank you very much, Errol. Thank you very much, Dan. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Lou.
Appreciate it. Up next, political correctness run amok.